Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder for a respective format. This particular video will be for the Explorer Best of 1 format. If you want to check out Standard, Historic, Best of 3, click the video playlist and the most recent video for each format will be listed so you can check out those decks there. As always, we get our data from Untapped.gg. It's a companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, loss rates, deck collection, a whole bunch of useful functionality, including in-game overlay. Free to use a whole bunch of it. The link is in the video description down below. In addition to being able to pull the deck list directly from there, I'll paste the deck list in the YouTube video description so you can easily import them into your MTG Arena client. So for this video, we are looking from September 11th through to September 18th. And as always, we look at the Platinum to Mythic rank. Before we jump into it this week, I normally don't like to pitch this, but I'm getting close to a milestone, so I want to see. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's free, easy way to help out the channel. I do these weekly. It helps kind of continue to grow. Similarly, if you can like the video, I'm close to 6,000 subs on YouTube, so want to try to hit that milestone by the end of the month, so appreciate it if you can. I try not to make every video pandering, so if you do enjoy this, please do, but in any case, let's jump into it. So we have 41,000 games of best of 1 that were played for the Explorer format. The top performing deck of the week is actually Rakdos Sacrifice. 64% win rate, 220 games played for this deck. And it's not an Anvil list, it is a Claim the Firstborn list. So usually with the Anvil, there's a little bit more like artifact sub-themes. You'll see the Bloodtithe Harvesters or like the vampires that make blood tokens as ways to kind of generate from there. With this particular list, it's really trying to take advantage. There's a lot of collected company or small creature decks. So Claim the Firstborn is really like a steal your best threat, attack with it, and then sacrifice it in a number of ways for value. You could sacrifice it to Witch's Oven to get you food tokens. You could sacrifice it to Village Rites or Deadly Dispute to draw you cards. You could sacrifice it to Ob Nixilis to get copies of the Planeswalker. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. In terms of the format, this is actually the best deck at enabling Revolt on Fatal Push. So many incidental ways to generate the Revolt trigger of something leaving the battlefield. So it's a Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven deck. You got Claims, Unlucky Witness is card advantage. You have your 6 draw spells as well. Kroxa kind of for the long games, and Fables to kind of clear out your draws. And then you have your Mayhem Devil, which plays beautifully with the deck. This is really a good shell for Ob Nixilis as well to shine because you're nickeling and diming your opponent. The only change with Dominaria that we haven't really fully seen is with the addition of Sulphur Springs, the Pain Land. I would look to get that added into the mana base. Just from a quick scan, I'd probably cut one Hunted Ridge and then maybe like some combination of the basics to play 4 of those. You could probably play like 1 of each and then play like 2 Haunted Ridge. This deck really wants, you see so many 1 mana spells, you want to have your untapped mana source on 1. And you're gaining life in a number of different ways with this deck, so you're not as concerned with your life total. You want to make sure you have the right color untapped on the early turns. So Rakdos Sacrifice, number 1 deck. Then we go to Mono Blue Spirits. So this is a deck that has been very popular. It's pretty much a clean port from the Pioneer version. So 63% win rate. This deck here, what you're looking to do is get out like an early kind of threat, ideally an evasive one, something with flying like Mausoleum Wanderer, Spectral Sailor, and then you have the ability to throw on a Curious Obsession to draw you cards. And then you protect it in a number of ways. You have counter spells, you can protect it with Rattle Chains. Rattle Chains also lets you flash in stuff to kind of get around your opponent's removal, slip out the back, same idea. Because you're all spirits, you have Supreme Phantom. Like the best draws are when you have Rattle Chain, so then you always play on their turn. Supreme Phantom allows you to buff your squad. Shacklegeist lets you really kind of trickily tap down things, offense, defense to get through damage. And then you have like mana that you could sink into Ascended Spirit. This list is also playing a couple copies of Brazen Borrow for bounce. The list I was playing a while back, I was off the Borrowers. Instead I was just playing the 1 mana bounce. Oh, it's forgetting it with the Scry. Oh, it's bothering me. The 1 mana bounce instant spell. Instead, The one card that could see addition from Dominaria is the new kind of Curious Obsession effect. The 1-mana enchantment draws cards, and then if it's legendary, gets a buff. We don't really have legendaries in this deck, but the plus of that one over something like Curious Obsession, while this does give you the buff, Curious Obsession, if you can't attack for the turn, it falls off. So I'd probably add those additional enchantment effects as like 1 or 2. You want to kind of keep getting the flow, because a lot of this deck is 1-for-1 answers, so you want to keep kind of that coming through. You also have some creature lines with the Faceless Havens, and you'll notice the Snow package because of Ascendant Spirit to play with it. The next deck is a special one because it's my deck. So I've been toying around with Monoblock Devotion. I've got a couple 7-win runs. I've also been hanging around the top 250 Mythic with it. So I'll go to the sec. So this is my deck. 8-2 with it. You can see like my record hanging around 250 Mythic. I was playing a lot of events with it while I was on the side. So it's kind of a port of the standard version, but we get a lot of powerful cards in his Explorer. Fatal Push, we get access to Thoughtseize. So I'm still using the Evolved Sleepers. I've been really impressed with this on turn 1, because a lot of it times 2, like you play this on 1, turn 2, you can Thoughtseize your opponent and get this bigger. We have a combination of removal spells that I found useful. A couple copies of Eliminate. Most of the creatures are collected company targets, so they fall in the 3 mana. But this can also hit a Narset out of your opponent. It could also hit opponent's Liliana the Veils, which we feature in this deck as well. We have a couple Heartless Acts to scale bigger. It hits Grease Fang, it hits Parhelion, it can hit opponent's Shieldred or anything larger in that sense. Singular, Tenacious Underdog, just as something to pitch or just another kind of recursive threat. Gifted Aetherborns helps a lot in like the mono red matchup, or just to help you race. You're going to be doing damage to yourself with like Thoughtseize, and this allows you to gain it back. Most mono red's creatures are 2-power creatures. They also don't play Lightning Strike that often. They're going to be typically playing Stomp, so this gets around it that way. So a lot of it, if their opponents do want to kill our threats that gain life, they have to 2-for-1 themselves, which is card advantage to us. Similarly, we have the Graveyard Trespasser, same idea. They have to 2-for-1 themselves. We could gain life on attacks as well. Liliana, I started with 3, I went down to 2 because a lot of times it's just an Edict effect. In Best of 1 at least, it's mostly creature based, and Liliana's not great into like the Mono Blue Spirits list, or even like Angels. It's not that great. Mono Red, it's awful against Greasefang because they want to discard stuff, so I've been trimming it down a bit. If anything, I would probably look to further cut Liliana, and then potentially just go up another either Tenacious Underdog or Sleeper Agent, and then maybe Evelyn on the top end for some card advantage. We have Murderous Rider as a catch-all removal, also hits Planeswalkers, and has a lifelink body. Don't be afraid in certain matchups, especially if it's up against more controlling decks, just to play this as a 2-3. Sometimes you just need to apply pressure to your opponent. Shieldred is kind of the house of the deck, just absolutely destroys mono red. It puts a clock on Greasefang if they can't get the combo out. Against Angels, it kind of controls their life gain as well, kind of tempo. It's pretty bad against Spirits if they have a lot of bounce. They can usually get around it. And it's also just a 4 mana that easily countered. And then Invoke Despair has been a good way to just catch up. Like, this goes over the top of all the Rakdos decks, like the Rakdos mid-range decks. It's just really effective to kind of draw you cards. Really good against control as well. In terms of mana base, I was considering going with a Snow mana base to play Faceless Haven, but instead I just opted to go with Hive of the Eye Tyrant. You got castles, 1 Ifnir, Deadlands. This can be removal in a pinch. It's also a way to turn on Revolt, similarly with Field of Ruin, singular copy. There's the creature lands in the format, so I've liked this as a one-of, mostly just to get rid of Hall of the Storm Giants, or even like the odd like Hive or Den. So like I said, this is kind of my stats. You can see all my kind of playing around with it, seeing what I've been adding, what I've been taking out, and kind of going through the matches. I lost to Angels, and I lost to Mono Blue Spirits. Speaking of Angels, we have Celestia Angels as the next deck, 60% win rate. This is a life gain synergy deck that's looking to play Angels to kind of get a bunch of value. Your best draws are usually Luminarch into Bishop of the Wings into Resplendent Angel. That allows you to start creating a bunch of Angels each turn. You got card advantage in the Overseer as well as Collected Company, and a Johnny could serve as a one-sided board wipe with its ultimate in terms of the 0 ability if you have 35 or more life. Righteous Valkyrie gains you life, Youthful, stuff like that. We didn't get Pain Lines, otherwise I'd suggest playing Pain Lines in this deck. I don't particularly like these Sun Petals, but they're kind of a necessary evil. But I think even just with the combination of these lines, you should have enough sources, because you really want the untapped white on one, and this doesn't come into play untapped with any of these subsequent lines, so this one usually hurts us a lot more than anything. We then move to Mono Red Aggro, so this is the creature heavier version. We'll feature a burn heavier version later on. This is at just a shade under 60%. So this is looking to play creatures, a bunch of them early, ideally with like a Burning Tree Emissary drop. You got Sideways Monkey, you got Angry Gobbo, Kumano to kind of pump it up. This version here is not on Ferocidon, so it's a bit weaker into the Angels decks and Sheoldred. But Chain Whirler helps with some of the creature matchups, good against spirits, and then Annex could scale and get larger with the combination of Embercleave, Torbrand as well. Some of the versions that I've seen in Pioneer have moved off of some copies of Torbrand for Hazoret to deal with an influx of removal-based decks. But Torbrand's a big threat and could power up a lot of these, makes your copies of Stomp and Firebrand better, but you can see what I mean in like this deck compared to my mono black deck. Their only real removal is like a 2-for-1, or they have to use Torbrand in conjunction with one of these effects to kind of kill your opponent. Notably, if you have Torbrand out and then you cast Chain Whirler, it does 3 damage each creature, so that's kind of a one-sided board wipe you could kind of combo kill your opponent with. We then move to Abzan Greasefang. So this is a graveyard-focused combo deck. If you're not aware, what you're trying to do is throw a Parhelion, ideally, or Skyship Sovereign, but Parhelion's your main target. In the Abzan version, you also have Chariot for the fair game. But with Greasefang, you reanimate Parhelion, you crew it, it gets haste, you attack your opponent for 13 on the spot, get 2 Angels. Usually as early as turn 3. Technically, you can do it on turn 2 if you mill Greasefang and Parhelion off a Stitcher, and then you have Can't Stay Awake in hand. But you pretty much put your opponent at like a dead state. You have like Witherbloom Command to mill, Grizzly Salvage to mill, Liliana to put cards into your graveyard, Rafine to kind of loot, and then you have Corpse Churn that also mills, and then kind of just other copies of like Grizzly Salvage style effects. Then we have a cool one here. I got to try this deck out. It's Mono Green Elves. And you can see like with this deck here, there's some grayed out cards with numbers. I'm missing some Elves. I don't normally play Elves, so I need 7 rare wild cards to craft this. I have 39, so it's a cool way to see what decks you can build and what you can't. But this is looking to leverage some of the new Elves. So you have Leaf Crowned Visionary. This is a Lord for your Elves, but then also lets you, whenever you cast an Elf, draw cards. So ideally what you want to try to do is get a big Marwyn out. Generate a lot of mana, similarly with Circle of the Dream Druids, generate a lot of mana, and then like Realm Walker out, or like the Leaf Crown Druid, you kind of chain together spells, draw a bunch of cards. You got 8 or 12 1-mana Accelerant or Pseudo Accelerants. You have Lords in Kleincaller and Leaf Crown Druid. War Master gets you wide as well, and then this version's also playing Defiler of Vigor, which can serve to, you could pay the alternate cost by paying life instead, and then it makes your creatures bigger as well, so it's kind of a build your own Craterhoof Behemoth kind of effect. So interesting take on that, another Collected Company deck like we mentioned. Then we go to Mono Red Burn. So the other one was the creature heavier version, this is the burn heavier version. So you have Soulscar Mage and Gitu Lava Runner and Viashino. These are your 1-mana kind of grow bigger. This is 2-mana 2/1 that deals 2 damage to something. You got some Bone Crushers for the Stomp and the ability. Chandra and Light Up the Stage are your card advantage engines. Skewer Wizard's Lightning as no-name bolts, conditional bolts, and then some Kumanos and Play with Fires. The one thing with this mana base is I would just look to put some Den of the Bugbear in here. It's pretty free to include, as well as 1 Sokenzan. I'd probably do 2 Den if you're playing 20 lands, and 1 Sokenzan, and then the Ramanapa Ruins are pretty useful as well. That was 55% win rate, and then we moved to Mono Green Stompy, 54%, and this is a chunkier creature version. We saw the Elves that's looking to play kind of synergy base. This one's looking to use your Accelerants to drop like a turn 2 5-power creature, whether Lovestruck, Ronus, Steel Leaf Champion. You have Graveyard Hate with Scavenging Ooze, Great Henge, so this is kind of the Turbo Henge version. You know, like turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. Try to cheat out the Great Henge, get your card advantage. Primal Mites is removal. card advantage with Werewolf Pack Leader. You got some Kazandus mixed into there as well. So that's it for Explore. Let me know what you've been playing. As you saw, Mono Black's been my deck of choice for the last little bit. But what have you been ranking up with? What have you been playing? What have you been enjoying? If you've been testing out any of the new cards from Dominaria in your decks. And like I said, if you can, greatly appreciate it if you can drop a sub or just at least, very least, like the video. Helps out and costs you absolutely nothing. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one and stay safe out there.